Congratulations to Tadej Pogačar, who has won a second Tour de France in a row. The Slovenian rounded off the 2021 edition in Paris to become the youngest rider to ever win back-to-back Tours de France. So as Pogačar celebrates deep into the Parisian night, we ask the question, how did Tadej Pogačar win the Tour de France? Before the beginning of this year's Tour de France, Tadej Pogačar came into the race as one of the red-hot favourites. After a dominant season which saw him win at the UAE Tour, Tirreno Adriatico, Liège-Bastogne-Liège and the Tour of Slovenia, expectations were high for the UAE Team Emirates leader. As this team invested over the winter, new faces joined Tadej on the start line, including key domestiques Marc Hirschi and Rafał Majka. His whole team in fact were brought with the one sole aim of winning the Tour de France and denying the other favourites such as Primož Roglič, Richard Carapaz, Rigoberto Urán, Geraint Thomas and Miguel Angel Lopez victory. Once the race set off from Brest, all eyes were on Tadej Pogačar as the race negotiated a hectic day in the northwest of France. A rogue spectator standing at the top of the Côte de Saint-Rivoal changed the race entirely by causing a large crash. This incident wiped out Tony Martin and a number of Jumbo-Visma riders, bringing down a large amount of the peloton. The crashes would continue on later into the stage, when another pile-up occurred on the road to Landerneau, ruling out the chances of Ineos rider Richie Porte and Movistar's Miguel Angel Lopez. Once the peloton reached the final climb, Tadej Pogačar was in a safe place. Although he couldn't follow the stage-winning move, Pogačar arrived in the main group of favourites just 8 seconds behind Julian Alaphilippe. Stage 2 to the Mur de Bretagne offered a chance for Pogačar to strike out. After taking some bonus seconds during the stage, Tadej Pogačar attacked in response to Mathieu van der Poel, bringing the Slovenian a hard-fought second place on the stage. Tadej would not take the yellow jersey here, but Pogačar gained a small advantage over all of his rivals here. On stage 3, however, everything changed. The stage between Lorient to Pontivy was marred by crashes. First of all, Geraint Thomas, one of the favourites for the 2021 Tour de France, crashed on a coastal road with 140k to go. Then the final 10 kilometres were chaos. With 9k to go, Jumbo-Visma were victims of a large crash on the side of the road. In the crash we saw Jonas Vingegaard, Tony Martin and Primož Roglič of Jumbo-Visma all caught up in a crash. These incidents weren't done. There were more crashes and splits in the bunch during the final couple of kilometres, forcing Tadej Pogačar to shed 26 seconds to Richard Carapaz, who was in the front group alongside stage winner Tim Merlier. Further down the road, however, Primož Roglič crossed the line 55 seconds behind Pogačar, but with rips all over his jersey. This looked to be the end for Primož Roglic's attempt at yellow jersey redemption. Stage 5 would reopen the GC battle. The stage's 27.2 km long individual time trial provided the opportunity for a big GC shakeup, and given that Tadej Pogačar won the individual time trial in 2020, he had big expectations. Starting the stage in the final wave of riders, Tadej flew around the course, shattering the times of all that went before him. At the finish, Stefan Kung watched on as Tadej Pogačar stormed over the finish line, 19 seconds faster than Stefan Kung. As Pogačar won his first stage of the 2021 Tour de France, he shattered the GC completely. Although he didn't take the yellow jersey away from Mathieu van der Poel, Pogačar was now 1 minute and 43 seconds ahead of Jonas Vingegaard and 1 minute and 44 seconds ahead of Richard Carapaz, his assumed GC threats. As Mathieu van der Poel held the jersey through stages 6 and 7, the Alps would arrive on stage 8 to Le Grand Bornand. On the stage, there were plenty of riders up the road to contend a stage win, but in the group of favourites, UAE Team Emirates riders Davide Formolo and Brandon McNulty increased the speed over the Col de Rome. With 30 km to go on the stage, Tadej Pogačar struck out and attacked, only bringing Richard Carapaz along with him. After only 1 kilometre of Carapaz's company, Pogačar dropped the Ecuadorian and extended his gap to over 3 minutes. Whilst everyone scrambled in the group of favourites 3 minutes behind, Pogačar swept up the breakaway riders to contend a high placing on the stage. In the end, Pogačar crossed the line in 4th place on the stage behind Dylan Teuns, whilst a group of favourites including Carapaz, Vingegaard, Kelderman and Maas crossed the line 4 minutes behind. This all meant that Tadej Pogačar took the yellow jersey with a substantial buffer of almost 5 minutes over all of his GC rivals. Tadej's long-range effort and the solo ride was phenomenal and will most likely go down as Pogacar's crowning moment in this year's Tour de France. The show must go on, however. The day after, the mountains continued as the race headed towards Tignes. Ben O'Connor, leader of AG2R Citroën, waltzed away to stage victory, 8 minutes up the road. Behind, Tadej Pogacar and his UAE Team Emirates squad were soldiering on. By attacking away on the final climb with ease, Tadej Pogacar's aggressive riding style allowed him to sweep up around 30 seconds on most of his rivals. Pogacar had a new rival 2 minutes behind in GC, however, as Ben O'Connor managed to climb up to second, but his lead was still substantial. As the Tour headed to Provence, Mont Ventoux awaited for the peloton. Stage 11 offered the Giants of Provence on 2 occasions with a downhill finish into Malocène. Whilst Ineos Grenadiers controlled much of the stage, Tadej Pogacar hung in. Towards the top of the final ascent of Mont Ventoux, Pogacar would be in difficulty, however, as Jonas Vingegaard attacked from the group of favourites. While Tadej Pogacar could hold on initially, the Slovenian was dropped by the young Dane as the race approached the summit of the mountain. The gap between the two riders stood at around 30 seconds, but Pogacar, along with Uran and Carapaz, limited the losses and bridged up to Vingegaard on the descent to Malocène. By crossing the line alongside many of his rivals, Tadej would extend his lead over second place, but the race was not over as such yet. The next stages would be typical Tour de France transitional stages, allowing the race to move over to the Pyrenees for the final showdown for the yellow jersey. The Pyrenees would begin in earnest on stage 15 with a challenging stage from CERET to Andorra. Pogacar hung in safe throughout the stage as the race passed over some of the highest climbs of this year's Tour at over 2,000 meters in altitude. Instead of Pogacar and his UAE Team Emirates squad taking the lead, they allowed the other teams to work in the peloton, such as Ineos Grenadiers and Movistar. On the final climb of the day, the Base Chalice, Tadej Pogacar would roll with the punches laid down by GC contenders Uran, Carapaz, O'Connor and Vingegaard. The moves were coming thick and fast, but Tadej Pogacar responded strongly to each one. The group expanded and came across the finishing line as one. Pogacar didn't lose any time here to any key favourites, but he certainly proved that he was the strongest already in the Pyrenees. Stage 17 would bring the second summit finish of the race at the summit of the Col du Portet. Although the stage was held on Bastille Day, it was not a French affair, as UAE worked hard during the day to bring Anthony Perez back from the early breakaway. As the climb began, Rafał Majka upped the pace. Once the Polish super domestique was done with his job, Tadej Pogacar attacked sharply. Following the Slovenian, we found Jonas Vingegaard and Richard Carapaz. As Vingegaard and Pogacar pulled for most of the climb, the duo were frustrated with Carapaz, who bluffed his way to the top of the Col du Portet. The Ecuadorian jumped away with 1 kilometer to go, testing the legs of Pogacar and Vingegaard. Pogacar responded quickly, whilst the Dane rode back on terms shortly after. As the trio rode into the finale, Tadej Pogacar launched one of his ruthless attacks to take the stage win on the summit of the Col du Portet, 3 seconds ahead of Jonas Vingegaard. Now leading the race 5 minutes and 39 seconds ahead of Jonas Vingegaard, there was really nothing stopping Tadej Pogacar as he proved his superior strength in the mountains. This would only continue into stage 18 when Pogacar replicated his effort from the day before in Les Ardennes. The Slovenian attacked once Majka's work was done, pulling away alongside Carapaz, Vingegaard and Mas this time. The group would work together, gaining a large gap over the GC favourites before Tadej Pogacar would break Enric Mas's heart by laying down the law and sprinting away to stage glory at Les Ardennes. Pogacar finished the stage just 2 seconds ahead of Carapaz and Vingegaard, his closest GC rivals, but this Tour de France felt done and dusted at this point. With a 5 minutes and 45 second lead over Jonas Vingegaard and a 5 minutes and 51 second lead over Richard Carapaz, the podium would remain the same until the end of the Tour de France in Paris. Stage 20's individual time trial around the vineyards of Saint-Emilion allowed Pogacar to aim for a 4th stage win in the race, after having won in the past 2 individual time trials at the Tour de France. This year, however, Pogacar played it safe. He was careful through the corners in order to avoid any unnecessary risks or damage to himself. The large buffer he had in general classification protected him from any surprises on the final individual time trial like last year, but the Dane in second place, Jonas Vingegaard, flew around the course and gained 25 seconds on Tadej Pogacar. Whilst Wout van Aert took stage glory in Saint-Emilion, Tadej Pogačar closed the GC battle out officially by seizing the yellow jersey with an advantage of 5 minutes and 20 seconds over Jonas Vingegaard and a 7 minutes and 3 second advantage over Richard Carapaz. So for the second year in a row, Tadej Pogačar rode into Paris as the champion of the Tour de France. The script could not be any more different to that of last year, as Pogačar dominated this race from start to finish. All in all, Tadej Pogačar was one of the few riders in the peloton to stay out of danger in the race, avoiding all the nasty crashes in the first week of the Tour. Also, Tadej Pogačar won the Tour de France due to his versatility. He is able to finish in the top 5 on a hill stage, whilst charging away to individual time trial glory and otherwise dancing off on alpine passes. This Slovenian really can do everything, and along with a solid team at UAE, Tadej Pogačar has rightfully become the champion of the 2021 Tour de France. Anyways, that's how Tadej Pogačar won the 2021 Tour de France. Let me know down below what your memories are of Tadej Pogačar from this year's tour, and what you're expecting from him in the years to come. So all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Tour de France content and now Olympic Games content coming out next week, and we will see you round.